Every morning, when I wash my face and look in the mirror, I see this scar, and I remember that day. So every day, I start the morning off with fresh hatred. This here is a bit of dialogue spoken from the main character of the Shonen Jump manga series, Kagurabachi, a series that I have recently caught up to, and a series that I've somehow fallen into the genuine cult-like fanbase of. And the deeper and deeper I fall into it, the more I appreciate the series itself. But what if I told you that this wasn't always the case? What if I told you that at one point it was a bit of the opposite, and I was actually a doubter of the series? Kagurabachi is a manga that's been around for quite some time now. It first debuted in Shonen Jump on September 19, 2023, meaning that it will be turning, or will have turned depending on when this video gets posted, 2 years old. And currently, at the time of this recording, it has 92 chapters. Within that time, however, the series has gained a very decently sized but very vocal fan base. So much so that at this point, I'd be amazed if there's anyone watching who hasn't seen it online yet. But honestly, this series is a bit of an anomaly. You see, right out the jump, this manga had people talking. From the first few chapters alone, people were already having discourse, making videos, and even making a ton of memes. Hell, the first chapter alone did exceptionally well in the Shonen Jump app. With all this attention it was getting, I myself wanted to see what was up. Now, me and Kagurabachi, we go way back. As a matter of fact, I've known about this series before it had even dropped its first chapter. I can remember it first getting announced on Twitter, and I can't remember where exactly it came from, but I do remember seeing a tweet announcing its release. And attached to it was a single image of the main character, which doesn't seem like anything too crazy, and on a normal occurrence I and many other people probably would have just scrolled right past it, but this wasn't the case. You see, this single announcement alone was enough to spark a lot of talk about the series, and a lot of it was actually negative at first, people calling it generic or saying that the series was going to get axed in its first 20 chapters, which is something Shonen Jump has gained a reputation for doing within the last few years. This is why it's impressive that Kagurabachi has stood the test of time and is still holding out strong. Now, when I first tapped into the series, I was keeping up with some of the early chapters, but unfortunately back then it didn't really grab me. The main plot centers around a young man named Chihiro Rokuhira. His father was a well-renowned blacksmith who used to forge these enchanted swords with sorcery. One day, however, a group known as the Hishaku show up to their house, take all 6 of the swords he had, and end up killing him, leaving Chihiro alone and full of hatred. Now, 6 years later in the present, he's on a quest to retrieve all 6 swords to prevent them from being used for evil deeds. At first I thought this was a cool premise, but for some reason I just wasn't too hooked. I kinda thought that it was gonna be some edgy revenge story with a nonchalant MC with just some okay artwork, and I wasn't really interested in keeping up with the weekly, so I had kinda drifted away from the series and didn't look back. That is, until this year. I went back and made the decision to revisit Kagurabachi and catch up to the latest chapter. People online were hyping up some recent stuff, and even some of my friends were telling me that the story is getting really good. So I was like, you know what? Fine, I'll go ahead and see just what y'all are talking about. And the result of that was me walking into one of, if not the best new gen Shonen Jump series from the 2020s. And this isn't an overstatement. I had an underlying feeling that this manga was going to pick up at some point, and that definitely turned out to be the case going into the Sojo arc. A very solid introductory arc that lays the foundation of things to expect later into the story, giving us some more main characters, different organization groups, and build up to the auctioning event that will be taking place in the next arc. But where it really heated up was towards the latter portion, with a Kamunami vs Sojo fight, and of course the final battle, Sojo versus Chihiro. I found the sequence of events that unfolded here to be very entertaining. We got to see more of the power system, and there was also a huge emphasis on time, as well as showing off the different character perspectives was very reminiscent of the Shibuya incident arc in JJK. In between a lot of the dialogue and action within the arc, we get these brief flashback scenes of the characters coming up with different strategies to beat the main antagonist, and instead of breaking tension like some other shonen do, these flashbacks add context to certain events as they're happening. I thought this was pretty damn cool, and it isn't an easy thing to pull off. Now, last but not least, I gotta talk about the main antagonist of the arc. Me, and I'm sure most of you, love a good antagonist, and Kagurabachi has a very solid cast of them. For this arc, we've got Sojo. Within the short amount of chapters he's featured in, he manages to pose as a huge threat. He's the first enchanted blade user aside from Chihiro that we encounter, and just like Chihiro, he's also very smart and calculated, building up a lot of tension between between the two characters. And when their final battle actually arrived, I was not disappointed in the slightest. The paneling here was amazing, and the artwork was definitely the best it had been up to this point. It was action-packed, entertaining, and served as a great conclusion to this arc. But while this arc was good, the arc that followed was even better and continued to surprise me. It's safe to say that the Rakuzaichi arc is where I truly started to fall in love with the series. This is what everything before was building up to. This arc would go on to expand the world and the power system, introduce us to more new and important characters like Hakuri, for example, as well as his father Kyora, who is yet again another great antagonist. This is also where I really started to appreciate the manga's artwork. During the fight specifically, it manages to capture this sort of grittiness that's again very reminiscent of JJK as well as Chainsaw Man. Everything about this arc was just chef's kiss, and not only did I start to appreciate the story and the artwork more, but Chihiro as a protagonist. Like I said, when I had first checked out the series a couple years ago, I thought he would be a sort of generic and edgy protagonist, but after diving deeper into the manga, he gained a lot more depth and became a very compelling character. In the midst of all of his badass and aura-filled moments, which trust me, this manga has an abundance of, what really drove his character home for me was just how his revenge theme was written. While Chihiro does come off as sort of cold and quiet and full of hatred for the ones who killed his father, what's really important to him aside from retrieving the swords is saving people and protecting the weak, which was something that his father had always taught him to do, and is the main reason why those 6 blades were created. So whenever he goes up against one of the main antagonists, we get a bunch of clashing ideals and motives, which in turn offers room to explore a lot of the different themes. With the story being structured the way it is, it really benefits Chihiro's character. Like I said, while he is out for revenge and his father's death is a huge motivation, he still wants to go and protect others, which we see as early as the first arc that he puts this first above anything. Seeing this time and time again throughout the story would completely shift my perception that I was carrying before getting back into the series, not only of Chihiro as a protagonist, but of this manga as a whole. And it made me realize that this wasn't just going to be some generic revenge shonen story with a bland MC and forgettable side characters, but instead a weekly Shonen Jump series that has the potential to go down as one of the greats and end up being something truly special. If you have yet to check out Kagurabachi, hopefully this video convinced you to do so. The current arc in the manga is so far the longest, but probably the best one we've seen yet, and I didn't even mention it in this video. Oh, and also real quick, Kagurabachi is apparently getting an anime adaptation. I don't know when it's coming out, but I can only hope for it to be great. With that being said, however, we've reached the end of the video. Of course, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.
Bye.